Mandatory evacuation. Evacuate to where?
What do you think? Quarantine zone. See, some places got a heads up before the infection showed up. Most didn't.
Over the course of Joel and Ellie's journey through this game across America,
you find all these different societies, all these different enclaves, and you get to see how do they deal with the infected.
without the manifestation of this infection, you can't have these people making those interesting choices.
The world we decided was actually its own character, really grounded with a lot of texture. What happens, after 20 years of the fall of man, when no one's taking care of anything.
This book called The World Without Us describes in detail how much fighting on a day-to-day basis we have to do to keep nature back. And once you stop doing that, how quickly nature can reclaim that. As they talk about New York and how every day they pump water out of the subway system. That system breaks down within 2 days, a whole city is flooded. And once water gets introduced, then structures collapse pretty quickly. Trees will sprout and wind will carry those seeds over and gutters get clogged, and then when it rains, water fills up, and then pretty soon you have vegetation growing over there, and once you have vegetation, concrete breaks pretty easily for when there's a tree and roots breaking through that. Even some of the stuff we did on Uncharted, exploration of how temples were ruined, what if you took those ideas and put them in Pittsburgh or Boston?
And obviously right when that happened, you can imagine that being pretty terrible to look at. But you think about 20 years later, and with rainwater filling up those sinkholes and then those becoming like little marshes with lily pads in them.
We had this wonderful piece of concept art we developed really early on, and there are all of these wild animals that have escaped from a zoo and over the past 20 years have bred, and now they have herds roaming these cities. And that's something that tells you that life goes on and this world is worth saving.
There's something really pretty about nature reclaiming its domain once we are gone.
So fucking cool.
We have another level of OCD of the logic goes into some of these environments. Water damage seeps in, and then that creates some little moss growing on the floor, or a tree radiates energy from its base, and that over time starts to melt the snow around, and that's the reason why you'd see those like rings of leaves showing through in the snow. That gives it that extra, believability. This is pitch art. I'll try to start with an idea that conveys sort of the feel of the environment. Something like this, very brushstrokey, very painterly. You can see not a lot of detail, just energy and conveying a mood. This is sort of just a conversation starter, and then this would be more of an actual space. So you start talking about, is this too tight of a space right here? Would the player even fit through there? Do we even want to include water? Those are conversations you start having a little bit later. And then it usually needs several more passes back and forth in order to be tightened up to be the experience that you would see in the final product. So, dude, I was actually trying to figure out right here, there should probably be some dead foliage.
It might be cool to see some of the dead stuff around the edges of the green, or like even spilling out into the street.
Maybe what we do is, in some of these areas, we use it as like a transition from the actual concrete to the side of the building, so like they're almost sitting on top of a bed of dead foliage, like that really rich kind of like orangey brown color.
Sienna or something would be nice. Something real cheddary.
That's how you know you're done. The end product often ends up being stronger because that bouncing back off somebody else gives you a result that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of in the first place.
All right, here's the bridge. That's our way out of here.
As far as concept art goes, definitely the ultimate goal is just helping everybody as much as possible.
Me and the background artist will work together. I'll often just go to them because they've got like a really, really good like visual imagination. At some point, you came in almost like flat on. So that's kind of good because the bus station is right in your peripheral view, and you're probably going to enter the bus station. You're probably not going to get lost. But it doesn't at all utilize this cool architecture here, like the bus station sign. Like that's a really distinctive silhouette, and it's a really interesting sort of architectural detail. So we changed the entrance.
Look at that. Another city, another abandoned quarantine zone.
I think it's a better composition anyway. It's not so like symmetrical. And I think that was done so that this sign read better. If you didn't see the word bus on it, you might not know it's a bus station. So I think that helps.
Everything we're doing in the environments is relating back to what you should be feeling in the story or what's happening to these characters.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, can't deny that view.
Come on, this way.